So Canada had a big election, but unfortunately I can't say anything else about it because it hasn't happened yet. So let's go vote. Okay, so here we are out front of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which is where I'm going to vote. I've got my 2 forms of ID, so I'm ready to go. Unfortunately, we cannot take the camera inside the polling station, so I'll see you when I get out. All right, we did it. So all of the papers are pretty much predicting that it's going to be a Liberal victory. Justin Trudeau, new Prime Minister, but we still have about 6 more hours before the polls start to close, so we're just playing the waiting game until then. Oh boy, pancakes. Okay, so here we are on election night. We're watching the results as they come in here. We've got all these TVs, and the polls are just about to close in Ontario and Quebec, and so we're going to wait for that. Okay, so that was fast. With just 50 seats in, they are already declaring a Liberal victory.
Oh boy. Nope, there you go.
So that's that. I guess now we just wait to see how big the victory will be. Okay, Conservatives officially in second place.
We call right now CTV decision desk of a Liberal majority government.
Here's Prime Minister Harper conceding defeat. And here's Justin Trudeau, the new Prime Minister. A dramatic switch of government for the nation of Canada. So why did it happen? By the way, it's tomorrow now, or rather today. Well, the main reason, the single most obvious reason, in fact, was that Stephen Harper, the incumbent 3-term Conservative Prime Minister, was enormously unpopular. When the election began, his disapproval rating was at 60%, and 70% of Canadians said that they agreed it was time for a change in government. When you're facing numbers like that, it's pretty hard to get re-elected. I mean, it was so bad that Harper's campaign team literally had to use the phrase "an election is not a popularity contest" as one of their main talking points. Why was Harper so unpopular? Well, that is a harder question to answer. Though he got a lot of bad press for some of his edgier ideas, like banning Muslim immigrants from wearing the burqa when they recite the oath of citizenship, deporting immigrants who had been convicted of terrorist crimes, or capping the number of Syrian refugees that Canada was willing to admit, polls showed that these ideas were actually quite popular with Canadian voters and enjoyed majority support. Harper's main opponent, Liberal leader Justin Trudeau, by contrast, had a lot of positions that were not popular with the Canadian public, such as ramping up deficit spending, ending Canadian participation in the war on ISIS, and increasing immigration. But he still won the election anyway. So a lot of it just came down to old versus new and fatigue versus freshness. Canadian prime ministers do not face term limits and can keep running for re-election as often as they want. A prime minister thus has to decide for himself when would be a good time to retire, and a lot of Canadian prime ministers are not very good at this. Harper's decision to seek a 4th term after already serving nearly 10 years in office would have made him the longest continuously serving Canadian prime minister in over 100 years, and that was clearly a step too far for a lot of people. At some point, people just really get sick of a leader who never goes away. You get sick of his face, sick of his voice, and sick of his personality dominating every single political debate or discussion. The Trudeau campaign even ran this clever ad showing repeated footage of Harper standing in Parliament doing the same thing year after year, which really hammered home the length and increasing monotony of his rule. Harper was a strong conservative, and many people on the left really hated him. And regardless if you think they were right or wrong in doing so, it's hard to deny that Canadian politics became very bitter and polarized and angry in the final years of his administration. Justin Trudeau, by contrast, was a man who was much more fresh and attractive. He was young and charismatic and handsome, and the son of Pierre Trudeau, the most famous and important prime minister in Canadian history. Justin talked a lot about the importance of bringing Canadians together and unifying the country, and was basically just a happy, optimistic kind of guy. He was often criticized for being vague and corny, but he was undeniably the anti-Harper, and that's what people wanted. This, I should note, is also the main reason people are giving to explain why the 3rd place candidate, Thomas Mulcair of the New Democratic Party, did so poorly last night. Mulcair had originally been given high odds to defeat Harper, but as the campaign unfolded, a lot of his supporters drifted away from him and towards Trudeau. The theory is that this is because Mulcair was actually a lot more like Harper than he wanted to admit. Both were uncharismatic, pudgy, gray-haired men around the same age. Both had mostly stern and serious personalities, and both portrayed themselves as cautious, moderate leaders full of boringly specific policy ideas. Justin Trudeau, in contrast, was bold and exciting and full of speeches about hope and change and all the rest of it. Canada is a country that's a lot like America, but when it comes to fads and fashions, we're always a few years behind. So basically, we're just getting around to having our Obama moment right now at precisely the time America's is winding down. And just like every cheap Canadian knockoff, our Obama is a lot lamer and cheesier, but nevertheless, a majority of Canadians are currently in a state of euphoric satisfaction roughly equivalent to America circa 2008. And if I've learned one thing from modern American history, it's that this era of good feelings will never, ever go away, right?